A long time ago, I made a video where I said this. Hello VN devs, your visual novel is hot garbage. Feel free to send me your visual novels and I will take a look at them and tell you everything I don't like about them. And I never really followed up on that, but from now on, I will. Today, we are checking out 5 visual novels that were sent to me at some point from both dedicated fans and passionate developers. And even though I don't say it enough, I really appreciate it. So let's get right into it. To give everything a fair shot, I gave each visual novel about an hour of my time or one ending, whatever came first. And so, let's dive right in. I Want to Be a Game Dev is a game where you're a game dev, obviously, but prior to that, it starts with your graduation from high school, being depressed about your future outlook in life, and having to leave your friends behind. How oddly realistic. You're presented with a cute girl named Chloe, and you immediately have the choice to confess to her or not. I chose to not do this, because I made the choice to cringely confess in similar circumstances, and I painfully regretted it. Thanks for the PTSD game, not a great start. Luckily, whatever you choose, it turns out it was all a dream, and you wake up to start your senior year in high school, you lucky bastard. The core aspect of the story has you start a game developing club. While the club's initial idea of the game is rough at best, you slowly curate it with your friends and classmates. This includes choices that let you pick what aspect of the game to focus on, such as its writing or soundtrack, and these have to be carefully picked since skill checks will occasionally occur in the story, making sure you are approaching the right benchmark. You also have free time that lets you choose who you want to spend your time with, letting you grow closer to your friends. I mostly spent my time with Amelia. I was really convinced this game would turn out to be a horror game, and whilst in the time I read it, it was not, I hear this as a title you really want to read to the end. Whenever I hear that, it's usually not a good sign, so be warned. One thing you'll immediately notice about this game is its use of visual novel sprites above a 3D pixelated old school-esque background, and I thought that was pretty cool. It even uses bit crushed noises to add to that aesthetic. The sprites remind me of Danganronpa and are pretty cute, and the soundtrack was upbeat. I noticed the phone mechanic in the game that lets you text your friends and maybe initiate events does not work, or at least it didn't for me because it just kept resetting itself. The teacher would occasionally give you questions that boost stats, so I was incentivized to save the game and kinda just go at it until I got it right, which is never a good way to do your mechanics, because even with my knowledge in coding and music, the game kept giving me art questions. I'm not a jack of all trades, Mrs. Emmy. This is also the case in the minigames you have to do, which either can be failed or have mechanics that result in lesser stat gain. So I again foresee a lot of saving and reloading in the playing of these minigames. Mind you, they are all easy, but I'm a perfectionist, goddammit. Lastly, the skill checks have an RNG mechanic to them, which seems frustrating and unneeded, especially if the theme of this novel is closer to the good old club days I spent with my friends, rather than a hard focus on game development. Overall, I enjoyed my experience playing this game, and plan to come back to it eventually. Whether it actually does turn out to be a horror game, or it's just a slice-of-life game dev visual novel, its quality is apparent. Despite its mechanics either not working or making you reload a bunch, it's free, so I feel there's little reason not to check it out. But for this next visual novel, you'll have to pay good money for. In Iridescence, Floaty Line, a charming seaside epic! You play as a nameable protagonist, a person once charmed by a mermaid named Kita, but now alone after unfortunate circumstances. I'm not gonna lie, this visual novel story is quite all over the place, and I'm not even sure if I followed it correctly, so I can only describe the story as I interpreted it. You are living in a seaside town for university, and with your looming final history exam, you are expecting to leave town soon after. That being said, life sucks, and you don't want to leave the town or the memories you made here with Kita. So you decide to go out to a dock and fish, and end up yoinking a crab. And this crab would end up becoming the most important existence in your entire life. You take the crab home, inexplicably name it Marvin, and somehow end up with a young girl. No, I don't think the FBI is going to be buying that one. This young girl who we'll come to know as Aya, is a lost kid as it were, but we quickly deduce that she's another girl from the ocean. There's an entire save the world subplot going on, but to be frank, I didn't understand it, and I'm not Frank, I'm Bruce, so we'll ignore it. You briefly enjoy your daily life with Aya until plot-moving mysterious shenanigans happen and leave you distraught. I really can't say much more without spoiling things, because this visual novel is quite short. The story of this visual novel in general is hard to follow. I won't say I disliked it, it was just abstract. Where this novel truly shines is in its atmosphere that it creates, specifically the artwork and soundtrack. I hate to steal marketing terms, but this visual novel can deservedly market itself as having breathtaking artwork and music that will move you to tears. But I'm only saying that figuratively, I wasn't literally moved to tears. This novel really takes the stereotype of anime girl with huge eyes to another level though. Like, holy shit. Do I really have to say anymore? I don't dislike it, but I'm aware some people don't like that art style. For the price of about $10 though, it's a hard sell because one ending is about an hour long. I only did Layla's true ending, a character the protagonist ends up befriending while she helps him solve the mystery, and I'm not sure how the ends deviate, but depending on that will dictate how long the game is. This visual novel incorporates a novel concept of hidden shells in its backgrounds and CGs that you can search around and click for, but besides that, it is a straight visual novel. I'm a privileged YouTuber who gets things for free, so I enjoyed it, but maybe you might want to wait for this one to come on sale. If the other endings are longer than I think they are, then maybe at full price it's fine. The story is kind of all over the place though, but I really like the art and soundtrack, so if you're looking for an abstract story that takes place beachside, you might just enjoy this on a rainy day. Scenes from the Heart is a visual novel where you make a visual novel. Alright. The game dev stuff was cute, but I think we're getting a bit too meta here. It specifically starts with your group winning an award for the best indie game demo. The protagonist, the obtusely intelligent BruceGoneLoose the 39th, along with his childhood friend Chisaki and later friend Konaka, afterwards get called to do an interview about how their studio came to be, which is the narrative cue to introduce the backstory of the characters. This can be cliche, but I thought it was fine. It should be noted that the characters are written to be very tropey. Chisaki is a stock tsundere, and Konaka is a dairy otaku girl. I don't think this is necessarily bad. The problem is, I'm not convinced on the main premise of the story being the visual novel development. This dives into spoilers, but pretty much the whole reason they started making a visual novel was a roundabout way for Chisaki to confess her feelings to the protagonist. And frankly, I'm not convinced that a novel with such shaky ambitions could end up winning the Best Indie VN Demo award. This is probably pedantic, but if you really want to use these characters for that specific plot, I could have been much more convinced if Konaka wanted to follow her weeb ambitions to make a visual novel, rather than Chisaki of all things doing it when it's not even really something she inherently wants to do. Yes, I get it. Chisaki grew up with a musical background, she's the composer. Konaka literally meets the protagonist drawing ecchi art, and has a background in theater, and thus has experience in making well thought out characters. Assumedly, the protagonist is just the jack of all trades, who supports them both. The how is set up, but the why isn't really strong enough. Now, this is a demo, but I read the whole thing, and wasn't drawn in by the plot. It's pretty much like a chapter 0, a prelude of sorts, so I can't judge it that harshly. I just don't know what's gonna happen next, and not in a good way. Are we looking at their time developing the final visual novel to release? Clearly there is a competitive romantic element with the two main heroines, but to what extent? I feel like we established the characters without really doing anything. I was pretty negative there, but I don't hate it. I just don't know who it's written for or why at this very moment. The art in general is pretty good. I really appreciate the heterochromia representation, which we don't get enough of in visual novels. A notable thing this visual novel does is Nekopara-esque interludes, which I find to be pretty cute. One of them had grammar issues, which I don't find to be cute. The novel is free, so give it a shot, but Scenes from the Heart Part 1 the demo is more like a proof of concept before anything else, and I really would have to see what comes next before I say anything more. Congratulations! You have graduated high school, and it's time to pick a university. Why not pick the one that your childhood friend Catherine is going to? The one that has girls such as a Spanish marine biologist, a German cougar, or a liberal goth. You could also just not. I have to give Rivalhearts some semblance of credit. It made me cringe. And I understand my position as a dude nearing his 30s with all this anime shit in the background. I am the essence of cringe, and yet, I cringed. Rivalhearts advertises itself as being community-driven in the plot department, but as it currently stands, it's just an introduction to the main characters. There is no main plot yet besides protagonist Noah being convinced by Catherine to go to university to look for a girlfriend. It's a token visual novel plot. I'm not particularly captivated by the characters at this point in time either. The Spanish girl is annoying and wants to be a biologist. Both qualities I'm not interested in for romantic partners. The German cougar baby talks the protagonist, and for that whole scene I had to take a step back because this was the most cringe-worthy thing I've experienced in a novel. And the liberal goth is a liberal goth. By the way, I picked the liberal goth. I'd rather be vegan than date a biologist. But to be fair, there isn't much content to the game yet, so choosing a heroine doesn't do much. It doesn't seem like Catherine is a choice, and that's unfortunate because she's easily the best character so far. There are sequences with Noah texting back and forth with her, and frankly, they go on for too long. Noah evidently has some trauma related to a past love, but again, not really expanded upon. To be honest, Rivalhearts is another proof of concept feeling visual novel, so it's hard to formulate a strong opinion. I am interested in seeing how it develops with community feedback. However, you probably noticed, but the most unique aspect of Rivalhearts is that every scene is hand-drawn, and it's easily the best part of this visual novel. There is also a lot of variation in these CGs, and they all look good. I appreciate that they had a what's up next section shown with rough sketches, because it shows to me they have a general idea in mind where they want to go with the direction of the plot, even if it will be influenced by the community. It's free, it's short. If you have nothing better to do, go experience it right now on Steam. So what if you took a card game and made it into a visual novel? No, we're not talking about Shadowverse, because today instead, we will be checking out Chosen Card Chronicles. Usually I start these spiels by talking about or describing the protagonist and his situation, but the fact of the matter is he's mute. He just doesn't fucking talk. I'm not sure if he showers, but if he doesn't, he's like the awkward teenagers from my local game shop. There's not really a plot to this game at first. Chris and his little sister Charlotte, who is canonically 18 by the way, move in with their relatives in the city, one of which named Mona, who has been hyping up a card game called Tower of the Chosen that she loves to play with her friend group. That is the entire initial plot. She gets Chris and Charlotte into said card game, and most of your narrative content from that point will revolve around card battles. That being said, there is one interesting tidbit to be mentioning here. Evidently, Chris's muteness is not hereditary and was caused by a specific accident. And whilst I thought this was just an excuse to not do Chris's dialogue, in at least one battle that I played, you could see his psychological condition deteriorating and his negative thoughts coming up. This only happened about once in the 2 or so hours I played of Chosen Card Chronicles. But if I come back to this and it does some weird psychological shit, I swear to fucking God, man, it probably won't, but I appreciate there is more to the plot than playing card games. More importantly, since I do know this is a card game, let's talk about that. Chosen Card Chronicles is a card game auto-battler of sorts. You play the cards, but they do turn-based combat on their own. The main strategy of the game comes down to managing your main resource, command stars, as well as the positioning of your cards. The mechanics are pretty deep. Because this is a card game with a visual novel attached, and not a visual novel with a card game attached, I think that's fine. But this game really could have used more advanced tutorials or structure decks with strategies you are forced to play to help the player learn the cards better. Since at points the field can get pretty full, I found myself checking out and just seeing what happens rather than reading each card to know what will actually play out. Out of combat resource acquisition can be decently slow, and you are stuck with your starting structured deck for a while until you either buy another one or pray to RNGesus and open some good packs. That's fine, but to be honest, I don't want to grind for a long time just to get a good deck. I found myself jealous of other characters' decks more often than not, especially Casey. She literally has the OP dragon deck and is this world's Kaiba or Zane. But I want to be this world's Kaiba or Zane. The game does give you resources if you lose too many times in a row. Not that I'd personally know that or anything, which is nice, and you have a collection to build towards, assuming the game is quite long. I would say I like this game. I'd be curious to see if the plot does have some sustenance to it, or if it is just using subtle notes of Chris's trauma to spice things up without going into anything deeper. A visual novel card game is a pretty neat concept, but I'd have to play it more to see if it really picks up later, and to be honest, the grindiness is partially off-putting. If you made it this far, subscribe and like the video, but more importantly, go check out these games if you have time to spare. If you are a viewer who enjoyed this kind of video, let me know in the comments and give me more indie recommendations. And if you're a developer, keep sending me those games, because I'll probably be doing this again soon. Thanks for watching.